Syracuse is interested in a former LSU quarterback.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, this is the first of two mini podcasts we are doing today. So no full podcast, but two mini podcasts today. And we are talking about Rickie Collins, a former LSU quarterback in the transfer portal. He visited Syracuse yesterday, according to 24/7 Sports' Mike McAllister. Here's a little bio and scouting report. And then also, is this the right move for the Orange to make? Okay, because we know that the Orange are in the quarterback market, especially in the transfer portal. We've seen it now. This is actually the fourth quarterback that Syracuse is linked to. We're going to talk about the other one from Virginia tomorrow. But on today's show, it's about Rickie Collins, a former four-star high school recruit in 2023. Collins is 6'2", 205 pounds, with 3 years of college eligibility left. As far as the scouting report, you can get this from high school on 24/7 Sports. In summary, he's got good athleticism, above average mobility, but he kind of has poor footwork, and poor footwork leads to inaccuracy. So this is a direct quote that I got from 24/7 Sports. He's a raw, physically gifted QB that will need time to develop at the next level, but possesses all the tools necessary to become an elite player. So this is someone with, I guess, high risk, high reward, and he's got 3 years of eligibility left. If Syracuse, let's say, gets him, and remember, he was on a visit yesterday, which means there is some degree of interest here, okay? If they get him, I don't think Rickie Collins is guaranteed to start in 2025, say like a Caden Salter, right? Caden Salter from Liberty, if he comes to Syracuse, he's starting next year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Rickie Collins, I'm not so sure. I think he would be competing with Jakhari Williams in all likelihood, which it may not be the worst option in the world, but that's the type of quarterback we are looking for. He has barely thrown any passes at the college football level. If he develops, as his scouting report says, he can be an elite player. And in theory, you would have years of eligibility, but we'll get to that in the next segment here. If he doesn't develop, this kind of would remind me of the Carlos Del Rio Wilson situation, which, by the way, he's in the transfer portal. I wish him nothing but the best. But with Carlos Del Rio Wilson, he was a former four-star high school recruit who was at Florida. He transferred to Syracuse, I want to say after his true freshman season, and he didn't develop, at least to become a starting quarterback. Is he a backup? Sure. But he never developed to the point where I guess us as fans and even the team had any faith that he could be a starting quarterback. So he was mostly a backup. The way I look at Rickie Collins is very similar to Carlos Del Rio Wilson in the sense that they're former top high school recruits at big-time programs, one at Florida, Rickie Collins at LSU, and they just haven't quite panned out yet. But you're just hoping that, hey, if he goes to the right situation with the right scheme, then maybe he could pan out. An example of that actually happened this past season with Malik Murphy. Malik Murphy was at Texas for a couple years, and obviously with Texas, there was no room for him to play. He was never going to play there. I mean, they had Quinn Ewers. Next year's going to be Arch Manning. Malik Murphy was never going to play. He was a former top prospect. He transfers to Duke, and he has a terrific year. Now he's back in the transfer portal, and we're going to discuss that on the next segment. But I guess maybe that's the upside with a guy like Rickie Collins, where he could live up to that potential, but it's really all potential. And I don't think he's guaranteed to start next season if he were to commit to Syracuse. So coming up, I'm going to give you more thoughts on Rickie Collins. And I'll be honest with you, I'll give you more information about him. I don't necessarily love this move. I'll talk about it next on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Syracuse football, they're playing in the Holiday Bowl against Washington State on December 27th. FanDuel currently has the Orange as 6.5-point favorites, and with all the players opting out of Washington State, in the transfer portal especially, I mean, of course, why wouldn't the Orange be favored? You can do with that information what you want, but Syracuse right now on FanDuel is a 6.5-point favorite. What do you think of those odds? Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Rickie Collins is a former 4-star recruit in high school at LSU. He's in the transfer portal, and he visited Syracuse yesterday, according to 24/7 Sports' Mike McAllister. It sounds like a good idea in theory. This is a former top prospect at a big-time program like LSU. He wasn't getting any playing time, so he's looking for another home where I assume that he wants to play and be a starter somewhere. Now, with LSU, we have to understand the situation there. With starter Garrett Nussmeier potentially coming back, it's not official, but if he comes back, there is absolutely no path to playing time for him next season. None. The thing that concerns me with Rickie Collins is that he is not someone that was waiting in the wings that was going to be the starter at LSU next season if Nussmeier leaves for the draft. That's my concern with him, because Collins, he was the third stringer. He was the third stringer in 2023. Okay, fine. But he was the third stringer last season, too. He lost the job, the backup job, to Vandy transfer A.J. Swan. So you're getting the third string, not the second string. And LSU, for what it's worth, they are a program that can develop quarterbacks. Now, maybe it just depends on the quarterback, but they can develop them. Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels just won the Heisman Trophy. And Nussmeier, for what it's worth, was the backup last season to Jaden Daniels. And he looked really good as a full-time starter this season. So, you're not getting the backup from LSU who's seeking playing time. You're getting the third stringer from LSU who's seeking playing time. That's why I don't necessarily love this idea here. And I know people are probably intrigued with the fact that, hey, he's got 3 years of eligibility. So if you get him, I mean, Jackson, didn't you want a guy with 2+ years? Sure. In theory, it's a great idea, but there's a big negative with this. I talked about Malik Murphy. Malik Murphy transfers from Texas to Duke with multiple years of eligibility left. Has a great year with Duke. They go 9-3. Why wouldn't he want to come back? Well, I don't know, because now he's in the transfer portal again. And he's probably going to go to an upper tier program. So let's say you do get Rickie Collins, and the best case scenario does happen where he does well for us next season. Who's to say that he can't enter the portal again and chase a bigger NIL bag? That's my point. So I look at the years of eligibility, and I honestly don't even really care about it with him. So you're not guaranteed to get Collins for 3 years. That's the bottom line. Overall, I get that the staff is crossing their T's, dotting their I's in their quarterback search. You want to put out a wide landscape. You want to look at a lot of different players before figuring out the ones that you really want. But I am not thrilled with this option. I would much rather prefer a guy like Caden Salter, or if they do in fact have interest in this kid from Texas A&M, Connor Wigman, that's what I would prefer. But the staff does have to do their due diligence. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Is Rickie Collins the answer for Syracuse football at quarterback next season? I am not so sure. I can maybe be convinced if this were to happen, and I talked to a good amount of people about it, but I don't love it. I don't love his bio. You're not getting the backup. You're getting the third stringer. Sure, he's got years of eligibility, but if he has a great year, there's no stopping him from entering the transfer portal again. I don't love the move. And he took a visit, so obviously there's interest. I get it. The staff has to cast a wide net. Leave a comment in the comment section below your thoughts on Rickie Collins. As far as what is coming up on the podcast, there will be another mini podcast releasing shortly. And we're going to talk about another quarterback. But it's someone currently on the team. We're going to talk about Kyle McCord, okay? And I want to preface it by saying there's a lot of buzz online about him potentially getting another year of eligibility. So on this mini podcast that's coming up soon, I'm going to share with you what I know about the situation, if it's actually feasible for Kyle McCord to get another year. I don't want to get your hopes up on it, but it'll be the one time this offseason I address it. Let's just put it that way. We're going to do one mini podcast talking about Kyle McCord and maybe getting another year. And then that's that until we get a conclusion one way or another. So that's what's coming up on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. If you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast, which is coming shortly. So I will see you all again soon to talk about Kyle McCord and maybe, just maybe, getting another year of college eligibility.